John from Ripewave Audio for this Ripewave Connections, September 7th, 2024, and we have some exciting things to talk about. There's some new products starting to come out from Onkyo and Marantz. One's very value-oriented, and one is a statement piece. And we'll get into those later, but we have to catch up on the mailbox. A lot has been coming in the last 7 or so days, and we'd like to talk about these. Now, the first one we're going to bring up here is a person who has switched from a Pioneer Elite LX505 to Tone Winner. He says way more clarity and channel separation, a bit more finicky to set up versus the Pioneer, but the sound is better. And I always say I'd put up with a little bit of inconvenience for better sound, but if you're not into all the details, you may not want the finicky stuff. But he does miss the Dirac Live, but Magic Beans, true target sound, has made the difference. So Joe and Tell's offering here, and it's available, is potentially a better option than Dirac, as this person is suggesting. He's got about a week into this, but very impressed so far, the cost to value performance. So I'm glad it's working out for you. And yes, Magic Beans is doing a great job, and it's working with products like the Tone Winner. So a nice enhancement for that. Christopher is writing about Phono preamps for moving coil cartridges, and he's wondering why he can't use the moving magnet phono input. And then why do they have a TV RCA input listed as audio? Can I just use that with the phono ground? Well, there's a few things you got to understand when you take a raw signal from a turntable. And it will depend on the type of cartridge that you have, whether that's moving magnet or moving coil. But before I get into that, one thing you have to understand is a record has a special equalization curve. Now, the most common in the United States is the RIAA curve. There's also a UK curve, but the Recording Industry Association of America has this curve which takes the low notes and represents them on the record much higher and some of the high notes lower. So it's kind of a form of compression so you can fit longer songs on a side of a record. If you had music with a lot of low notes, it would quickly fill up a side. We'd have multiple record albums more often. So this is why we have this curve. It's necessary on a phono input to change the equalization for what's put on the record to the way it was recorded. And so taking those low notes and making them low like they should be, and the high ones as high as they should be. And this graph kind of shows that. Now, the other thing that a phono input does is make adjustments for loads and capacitance and other factors depending on whether you have a moving magnet or a moving coil cartridge. And here we have a Project Phono preamp here, which shows you how a preamp could be very adjustable to really fine tune for the type of cartridge you have. Now, the ones that are built into your AV receivers often have no adjustments at all. And that's what they like to stick with the moving magnet, because for the most part, you can get away with the pretty common parameters. But when you get to moving coil, there's a lot more to adjust. For impedance, making those selections, you can adjust for the gains and capacitance on these preamps. And you can't just use any cartridge for any input signal. So you want to make sure that you have a preamp that will accommodate the cartridge that you have in the turntable to get the optimal playback from your records. So this is why you can't just plug it into any RCA connection. And that ground wire, while important to get rid of noise, there's other factors to take into account. Very good question. I don't think it's an area that a lot of people understand. Sage is writing in about the remote with a TX-RZ30. He says, look, it's literally the same unit sold with basic models from Onkyo. It's also used in Pioneer as well. Well, you're right. They have done nothing to the mechanical design on this latest generation of Onkyo and Pioneer products. The prior generation, we did this in our video when we went over these, including when we had the in-house review of May of 23, but we also did that overview when we showed them side by side, the current and the prior generation, like the RZ50 mapped up to the RZ840, and they look exactly the same mechanically. So not just the remotes, but the units themselves. And I understand why you'd be disappointed that they didn't do the upgrade to the mechanical, but they did add direct to the RZ50. Then they did add in HDMI 2.1 support. And with the price only going up a couple $100, and we've even seen it lower than this, I think they've done well by us. I feel though for the next round, it's time for that mechanical design update and perhaps even the remote and get that kind of a little more modernized. So good observation there. Now, Sage is also reporting that he picked up the 6. Now, I interpret when he says he picked up the 6 as being the Onkyo TX-RZ30. If I interpret that incorrectly, let me know. He's feeling it's a great value. We got a good HDMI section and an amp for that price. No issues with the 4K, and it switches between the sources really well. Plenty of power, but he does have issues. He feels that AccuEQ is a mess. Now, this model doesn't have direct option, and you have to use the AccuEQ. He says setup never works, and when it does, no two measurements are ever the same, so he's getting very inconsistent. And the end result is he's getting really mediocre sound quality. Sound is muddy, bass is bloated, and lacks the detail of the lower end Yamaha. Yes, when I have that impression, when the sound is that bad, I would have the same feeling as you. He's even saying the dialogue is obliterated. And he never had an issue with his older receiver, and now it's unintelligible. So he's very disappointed. He'd like to return this, and well, I think he's past warranty, so he might want to look to unload this. And I feel like something is definitely wrong. I did not bring this particular model in. I brought in the RZ50, which we had good results with, and the RZ70, which is even better. Because it's this model, we got the AccuEQ, of course, not direct. But I'm wondering if there's something else going on here. What type of speakers are you trying to drive here? It could be that the onboard amplifiers aren't a good match for your speakers. So if you had something like Magnapan speakers, of course I'm exaggerating for effect here, but they need a lot of power. They can dip below 4 ohms. It just may be struggling for the type of load that you're putting on this entry-level Onkyo product. So that's one thing to consider. I haven't brought it in, and wondering if this does have the similar sound problems with really efficient, easy to drive speakers, which you may have. Just let me know. I'd be really curious on that result. Pet Minders. It's had 2 Onkyo receivers. Both lasted less than 3 years, and he's no way he's going to buy another one. Well, that is fair. You know, you gave him a second chance and they failed at the second chance. I understand that quality was an issue with Onkyo, particularly at the time of transition. This newer generation was coming out, designed at the time they were selling the company, is taken over new ownership. Sharp's making these in their manufacturing. So I'm wondering if that was part of it. I think in recent times, I haven't heard the same problems. So I'm wondering if it was just a matter of timing where that older Onkyo was struggling financially and they were going through this transition and the quality suffered. I do think the quality has gone up, but this audience feels otherwise. I do want to know about that. Now here's somebody that just purchased an RZ50 lately, and he needs help installing a 7.1.4 using speaker wires into the speaker inputs. Now, I don't really know where to start to answer with you, but I did put quite a lengthy response to you on here, and I won't read through this whole thing for this audience. What I wanted to make sure is, first, I'm assuming that you already have your speakers in place and they're pretty much wired up at the speaker, and really your challenge is at the receiver end. And if you need to go into the other side too, let me know. But you got a 2-conductor wire, and you've first got to understand that there's a polarity on speaker wires, and the wires themselves usually give an indicator of what is a plus and what is minus. And well, what you call plus and minus is up to you. I usually use the side that's coated either with letters or a color or a rib on the jacket, or if you can see through the speaker wire, it's clear wire, and the wires are gold and silver, I would use silver, and all that would represent the negative side. Right? And if it's color coded, I would say a black and a white pair where black would be negative, and a black and a red pair where black again would be negative. And then I said silver and copper with silver would be negative. So first do that and be consistent. Always wire the same side of the wire to negative and the same side of the wires to positive. And the failure to be consistent will result in out of phase, and it won't sound quite right. Now, I recommend going to the manual. I had this open when I went to write this. Page 39 of your unit. It says that it supports 4 to 16 ohm speakers, which is a good number of that. Now, some speakers dip below 4 ohms. I wouldn't recommend using those who spend a lot of time below 4 ohms with this receiver, at least the built-in amps. But if you are good with that, then I would take the power cord right off of it before I put anything into the speaker terminals. And then I would strip off the ends of the connectors. Now you have to pull on the pair them apart. I would usually do it at least a couple of inches. You want to be able to get to both sides of the terminals easily. And then they say take a 1/2 inch, or that's 12 millimeters. But you don't want to take more than that, because if too much of the insulation is pulled away, you run a danger of wires touching each other, and you could have a major problem with that if they did touch. So get that right. And then for guidance on your 7.1.4 speaker layout, go to page 58. And this unit has 9 channels of amplification. Now you're trying to do 11 speaker layout that needs power. So that means that 2 of your channels have to be powered externally. So you're going to need an external amp. And maybe this is where you're struggling. If you don't have 2 channels external available, you're going to have to go out and buy at least a 2-channel amplifier to pick that up. Then once you've done that, you're going to wire everything up to the back of the RZ50 on those speaker terminals, as it says on that diagram, except for your surround backs. And then the surround backs will be connected to your external amplifier, and then that amplifier of your choosing will be connected to the RZ50 through RCA unbalanced cable, left and right stereo pair, to the pre-out for surround back. And then you should be all set for that configuration. If you have more questions, let me know. But that's a quick overview of how to wire it up. Now this other person, he has an older Denon AVR 7200 WA. It's 140 watts per channel, and it sounds fantastic, but he did lose the HDMI board. So he did purchase an RZ50 to take its place, because of the solid reviews and the lower price. And he's wondering if he could still leverage that older receiver, at least for the onboard amps. So he's thinking about running the surrounds and the heights through the Onkyo, and then looks like the more critical speakers, front, left, and center, from the older receiver, because he probably thinks that sounds better. But regardless of what sounds better, he wants to divide it up. And you could offload this, particularly because, first of all, the Denon is rated similarly at 140 watts, but there is a 7.1 input on the Denon. These older receivers had that type of multi-channel input. You want to set your volume on the Denon first. Get that to a level which is kind of compatible with the other speakers, and then not change that. Then you run your Dirac from the Onkyo with that configured. and then the right level. So we'll balance, Dirac will balance it based on that volume knob setting on your Denon. That's why you don't want to change it. Now you'll be able to adjust it if you want to boost and cut it for preference at times, but it will have a negative impact if you go too far, right? Now this will de-stress the Onkyo. You know, dividing it up over two different sets of amplifiers is advisable, right? It de-stresses both of them. This will really make the signal go through additional processing. So that Onkyo will be converting from digital to analog. Then it will go into the Denon and convert it back to digital, and then ultimately to analog again before it sends it out to its amplification stage. So it's hard to say how much of a negative effect that will have, but it's not ideal. You really don't want to keep going back from analog to digital and digital to analog all the time. You want to limit the amount of times you do that. But you know, you could give that a try and see what it does. All right. Does it sound worse? Does it sound better? So give that a shot. Good luck with that project. This person has said the specs of the A2A, this is the Yamaha product, is a carbon copy of the budget V6A with HDMI 2.1. And it's limited to 24 gigabit per second. And you can't feed it an 8K 60 uncompressed. So there is some limitations on these lower models from Yamaha. Thank you for pointing this out. The Avantage A4A onwards is all 40 gigabits per second using Saber DACs. So the quality goes up. So not all Avantages are at the same level for performance with the DACs, with the HDMI board. It's a really great observation that he's made. It's an important detail. You really do have to look beyond the basic 8K and HDMI 2.1. So the average consumer is just going to see the 8K and the HDMI 2.1 on the box or wherever you're looking at and say, I'm good. But there are a lot of features in that 2.1 specification that manufacturers can decide to include or not include and decide how good of throughput it's going to do on this. I will also point out that most higher end receivers are 40 gigabits per second, as you say. Nothing's above that today, but the 2.1 specification goes up to 48 gigabits per second. And nothing that I know of on an AV receiver or processor today is delivering the full specification. So when you talk about future-proofing, we still have a little bit further to go. Oh, we did get over some major hurdles with 2.1, but we're not there completely. This person's trying to decide between a Cinema 50 and a 4800. What is the best to buy? He's not going to use the internal amplifiers, all external. Look, the AVR X4800, well, it has a very similar feature set, including the layouts. It will do exactly the same. But I'll say the sound quality is going to be noticeably better than the Marantz Cinema 50. And after that, it's just a cosmetic choice. So both about $2,500. If you're looking for sound quality, I would go with the Denon X4800H. Thank you. This is coming back to an earlier discussion that was had about CEC control. And John Smith has written in to add to the conversation that we talked about earlier. He says, yes, there are problems. And, you know, trying different HDMI cables and do a lot of tinkering with the settings. Now, it's an extra comment he made over what I said, tinkering with the settings, and he's right. Could result in better CEC cooperation. And after that, don't feel like it's your problem. I think that's great advice. Don't get frustrated at yourself. It's the technology. You're doing the best you can. So great comments there. Now we've got our modern audio 9100. We started doing review on this. We did the initial setup and we're starting to get some feedback on that video. And this person says they should come out with a processor only version for this family of products. Well, we always like to see processor separates because we have external amplifiers, and a lot of you do too. But they're aiming for simplicity. So if that's truly the goal and the brand they're trying to invoke with this modern audio series, it doesn't really fit in with separates because that adds an extra layer of complexity. But it is a comment that I do like. Dan is giving some feedback as well. The remote, he said, should be more capable, backlit. Subs should be independent. Menus should be high definition and full screen. Setup shouldn't time out. The included room correction should be very capable. Include a microphone and no manual. And don't make somebody manually key in measurements. The software should do that. And he's essentially agreeing with some of our thoughts that we brought up. He's looking forward to the next video. And he says, hey, if it sounds good, maybe we can put up with some of these inconveniences. I think this guy would make a great product manager for JBL. I think, if you were designing this, I think we would have had some better design choices. Audio Mania is saying that this unit is a complete turnoff. Class D amplifier at 0.5% THD, totally unacceptable for the price point. Setup is a mess, old-fashioned DOS-like screen messages, no pre-outs, no calibration mic. You have to pay an extra $300 for direct live. He's glad he bought the RZ50. Has all these things he's looking for just over $1,000, and I'm kind of aligned with you. Onkyo's figured this out, and we can even do better with other brands too. This other comment at the bottom here. I agree, John. Definitely not set up for dummies. If you didn't have experience, that setup would have tripped you up. I think it's a dud out of the gate. Maybe the sound tests will redeem it. Well, let's hope so. I went into this with a lot of optimism. Nice looking product. I said, hey, maybe they're gonna really introduce something exciting. And the way they were positioning it, I said, this is needed. We need something simple for a younger generation to catch on and use these systems. I think they're missing it. NL Hayes is writing, hey, thank you. Well, thank you for being here and listening and contributing to the conversation. James Morris is saying, be sure to download the calibration documentation, because if you just try to look at the application, the Easy Set EQ application on your phone, you're bound to make mistakes. So follow the documentation. And here we got a little screenshot of that documentation. It's on the JBL website. So look up Easy Set EQ manual, and then you'll get that. And we plan to follow that. So thanks for that heads up. Nice to see Juve again. He writes, looks great. But for now, all these units in my rack are black, including my Xbox. I guess I could mix it up. Wait a second. There is a black. It's good that they do have that option for those where white doesn't fit in with everything else you have. Of course, black does go with everything. Maybe they'll come out with an avocado green. If you remember the 70s, you might have remembered a kitchen that was avocado green. Maybe we could bring that back to audio. He also writes, that front, that could be plexiglass. Well, perhaps maybe we'll bring in a materials scientist to do an analysis to find out what that is. Fat JBL writes, I think JBL hasn't thought about the average user. Charging additional $300 for setup software is bad news. Yeah, he does understand licensing. They have to pay for it somehow. If you sell a product setup, it should be relatively easy. Open the box, the manuals. Wait, no manual there. What do I do? And here's a company that made dream speakers from the 60s to the 90s. This guy's disappointed. Onkyos and others have set up microphone internal software 15 years ago in mid-level units. So much for modern audio. They had it for a while. And I like the way he describes opening the box and not seeing the manual. And I agree, Denon and Onkyo are offering more simplicity. and I'll add at the lower cost. This comment says, seems like their usability department was out to lunch. Big, beautiful display, but no 10-foot interface. Manual entry of subwoofer distances. I was interested in this for efficiency at cooler temps of the Class D amplifiers and the newer aesthetics, but this may not be the one after all. I see this picture, this one's from the JBL website, and I guess there's a reason why she's sitting so close, because you're not going to see this 10 feet away. What even input you're on. They really got to think that through. I mean, it's software. You could update this. Something to work on. Dan is writing here, another great wrap-up. The reason why I asked you which phone you're using, iOS or Android, is because of the external mic. They do have an external mic you can use, and I do appreciate that heads up. We will be using an iPhone with iOS. Now, to hook this up for us to move forward with our testing, because we're used to using external amps, and this has no pre-outs, I had to go out and get some banana plugs. These aren't expensive ones. You can pay a lot for these. This came in 12 pairs for $20 on Amazon. Benznaka banana plugs. And I like them because they hold in well. There's 2 set screws in them. They will take a 12 gauge wire, which is what we're going to be using. And they got a nice clear color code, black versus red. The other thing that we bought were these couplers. Now this is something probably unique because I gotta keep changing things out all the time. But I have my speaker wires going directly to my external amps. What I thought it would do is disconnect them, the banana plugs, and put one end on here and another end on the wire that's gonna go back to the JBL or whatever I'm testing for the internal amplifiers. So I got a few sets of these to make that happen. And of course I needed speaker wire. And again, I didn't buy anything expensive. I got 12 gauge because I like using 12 gauge. 200 feet of this, $45. Pretty darn cheap. Here it is. It's white, didn't have to be white. It's got a black line in there. That's what I'll use for the negative terminal. They make this from 10 gauge up to 16 gauge. This is not rated for in-wall, and we're just going to run this on the floor temporarily while we're testing, and then we'll pick it up when we're done. And here is what we're going to do with the wiring. We talked about intercepting it, so this is how we're laying it out. This unit is capable of doing a 5.2.4 configuration, and here's how we can do it. We'll take the speakers that we have now. The unit doesn't support all the speakers we have. That's why they're ghosted out here. But this is using the 9 channels that it can, plus the 2 external subwoofers. And it should work just fine with those couplings and extra wires that we have. We also can do this at a 7.2.2 and then just wire that a little differently, intercept it in different places, and we can test out that different configuration. Of course, the JBL only has one speaker preset. It's a problem. We got some feedback from somebody that has the new A1H. This is the flagship receiver, the biggest receiver in the world, I believe. And when he disconnects the power supply for a day, or even 5 minutes, he's losing the Odyssey settings as if it has not been calibrated, and he doesn't know why. So it's not keeping that persistent in memory. It should survive a power outage. So I think this is odd. I don't have any suggestion other than this is an item I would call Denon. You spent a lot of money for this unit, $6,500, which is the normal US price. Call them. It's still in warranty. Let's see what they have to say. And if you learn something from them, write back. Thanks. Randall has written a couple weeks ago about his Marantz receiver. Now he has an SR6015 and he's getting a pink screen when the video conversion is turned on. And we talked about this the other week when he wrote in. And some others are weighing in, sorry to hear your problem here. I gave some suggestions about testing your cables. He also writes here he's having trouble with his Klipsch subwoofer, and the NL Hayes is also saying, yeah, I've had trouble with Klipsch and I've moved over to SVS. He's got one out for repair there. And he's hesitant to send this unit out for repair because he doesn't know how long it will come back or if he'll even get it back. Now, I just sent out our Cinema 50 to Marantz Repair. They use independent repair houses. It turned around in about a week. The guy communicated to me over email, and we got it back, and we got it fixed. There was a mechanical problem with that center pre-out. The inner connector was pushed in. Now he said, don't be so rough with it, but I think it was a quality defect. I'm not rough. I don't feel like I'm rough. But anyhow, he fixed it under warranty. So, you know, if it was me, I'd probably send it out, but I can understand your hesitation. And on the other one, I'm glad your SVS subwoofers are working out better for you after those problems with the Klipsch. A lot of comments on these racks that we get from BTI Industries. And JB, we go back a while. We've been talking back and forth for, it seems like years now, through this channel. And he said he's moved and he had to pack everything up and he's resetting everything up in a new house. So that's really big news. While these are disruptive, these moves, it gives you a chance to maybe improve things, put some better wiring in, maybe put the speakers in a little more ideal position. So interested in hear if you've actually elevated your experience after the move. So great to hear from you, as always. CGM has written in about the Anthem MRX SLM Slim, and no one's talking about it. Well, we hadn't talked about it at least, and you're right, we missed this one. This was announced last year at this time, and I didn't pick up on it, and I should have. Well, we'll have to correct that, I guess. It escaped me, but this is really a small unit. It's not just slim. It's got some interesting thermal capabilities on it. And to really appreciate the small size, they show it here next to a TV mount. And they actually on the website show you can mount it vertically, horizontally, whatever way you want it. So very interesting product. I'll have to look more into it to see what they've done. It does have amplifiers on it. They're using a Phoenix connector on this versus the standard 5-way binding post to keep it small. The NL Hayes, another frequent flyer here, and nice to see you. He's just thanking us for all the work, and I do appreciate that. And keep your comments coming. And Juve is back here again. He was wondering if, when creating an Atmos mix, if the producer say, hey, I want this really to come out these speakers, but then when it gets into the mix, it's on the wrong speaker than what the producer wants. Well, I don't know. I don't know how engaged all these producers are. Some might be, but what I hear is they just leave it up to the mixing engineer to do as they please in some cases. Yes, it is a conundrum. User a bunch of letters and numbers. I use squeeze boxes for audio only CDs, 192 hertz, right? So we're talking about streaming. And it's not a product I was too familiar with. I'll have to look into it. But he said that's old. There's more modern options like the WIM Ultra. We know WIM or WEAM. But he's saying, look, you got to get a streamer that's dedicated for video if you want the multi-channel. I think you're probably right. We're delving into this. Thank you for those details. And then we have Stefan writing in here too about our videos where we're talking about streaming the Atmos. So it's something that he's interested in as well. And we are particularly interested in multi-channel streaming. We want more options there. This is a good question. I'm getting asked here a couple of people about licensing with Dirac. Can we use it over multiple components? Can I just buy the license once and use it over more than one product? Unfortunately, no. They tie it down to the serial number, the exact model that you have, and it's not transferable. So you're really stuck there. Now, when you have a product like Onkyo where they're including the license and Integra too, that is not an issue. Of course, they do charge you for the dieback live bass control. So you want to get another option. That's still locked down to the serial number. But Michael does have a good workaround. When you set this up, take out a new email address and set up your licensing with that. That way, if you ever sell your product, you can give the product with the license by giving them the email. You give that email address up to the new owner. So good idea. Comments on the AV10. Greatest look at the new Purify top of the line Model 10. So Model 10, we're going to talk about that in a bit, using those Purify amplifiers. Of course, the AV10 doesn't have amplifiers in it. He's thinking that the AV10 open box refurb is a really good way to go because of the high quality of this unit. I've yet to review this. I'd love to bring one of these in. I think it probably is a top performer under $10,000. Comprehensive feature set, the channel count, the build quality, all looks good. And I do, though, think that Marantz and the parent of Marantz and Denon are keeping that separate as far as who is going to have the processor and who's going to get the receiver. So Denon gets a top-of-the-line AVR, and Marantz gets the top-of-the-line processor, and I think they're keeping it separate, and I think they're going to stick to it. And then here's somebody else, CGM, hoping that the newer models will come out with Class D amplification. Well, I hope they do too. And here we got a comment, if it wasn't for my Denon failing, I'd be more interested in this new Denon AVR A10H. And I agree, once you have an issue with a brand, it's hard to go back. Now, Can Beats is a little disappointed considering the AVC A10H is $7,500 in Australia without XLR balance. Big miss. And I really do feel bad for you in Australia and everybody else there. It seems like you got to pay outrageous prices for the same equipment we're buying at much lower prices. I feel for you. Joseph is saying good morning, almost Labor Day when this came in. Very eager to hear about the new Denon upgrade receiver. There's additional DAC upgrades, more channels. So we're going to do that comparison as we always do. So I'm anxious to get into this. And 314 Carpenter is saying, I believe Denon Marantz will expand the A series and shock the world and introduce a Denon preprocessor. Well, it could happen, but I'm not feeling that they will, but hey, let's see if we get surprised, right? Now here, Model 10, we were talking about this. Marantz has released what I call a statement amplifier. $15,000. I don't know if Marantz ever released a product this expensive before. If you know, let me know. But this may be very well one of their most expensive products ever. You can get it in black and champagne, say 250 watts per channel, fully balanced dual mono amplifiers, copper plated chassis. Well, we get copper plated in the Cinema 30, but some of these things trickle down. It's focused on a good moving magnet, moving coil preamplifier in it, and also take other analog inputs. Here's a quick look of what's behind there. You can see balanced inputs, which you don't always see on a Marantz integrated amplifier. And that's good to see. They've got the porthole still hanging in there, going strong with this, but some extra VU simulation on there. And look at that kind of gorgeous transformer in there, copper shielding in there. The best of the best, as they call it. Crafted in Japan. Now this fits into their amplifier lineup, the Model series, but a big jump up from the Model 30, which was only $3,000, up to this one, which is $15,000. So we will see. But they show some other products coming on their website with no other details, no prices or anything. The Link 10, a high-end streaming preamplifier that's coming with the same cosmetics as this Model 10. Is this going to be over $10,000 too? We'll see. And an SACD player, Super Audio CD player. I'm assuming it's Super Audio. With HDMI circuitry, yes, and other sources. And we have yet another product we learn about in the recent weeks here. Onkyo with their TX-RZ30 is coming in below the 50 with a 9.2 channel receiver. We don't know how much power or number of amplifiers that are into this. We can only guess. Limited details on the website right now. This is coming in October this year, $1,200, and it has some features in it. It's still going to have Dirac Live support. What I did see on the website, it listed Dirac Live bass control, single, multi, and some manual material is there suggesting that the two subwoofer outputs are independent, which you don't get with the RZ50. Very interesting. Let's see if that comes to fruition, but we're optimistic that this could have that. So what are your thoughts for this overview on September 7th, 2024? Do you like what's coming? Do you like what we're talking about? You want to join the conversation? Please do. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. You can always hit that thanks button and give us a one-time donation. We're going to have affiliate links. You go back and look at the video. Click on those. You can give, if you buy anything in those sessions that you have, we'll get a small commission. That helps us out and you don't pay more for the product. You can also hit that bell notification so you're informed when the next video is posted. And we do hope to see you back here real soon. Until the next time, keep evolving your audio experience.